Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are from UrbanDigs, and we got Scott Harris here today, member of the $1.5 billion sales club. I didn't know there was one, but we just created it just now.
Yes.
20
Can we please
plus,
be members?
give us an invite. 20 plus year veteran. When did you, 2003, Scott?
Yes. Yeah, this is now, I started in January of '03. So I guess it's 21 years that I've been doing this.
21 year, that's a veteran. 21 years. Not to say that you're old, Scott. You're very young. You're beautiful. Okay, but you're a veteran in this industry. And you got a team of 9?
We have a team of 9. We do.
Okay.
At Brown Harris Stevens.
Okay. At Brown Harris Stevens, and you see things, you've been successful, you know strategies, you've been down the block before, you know this market inside and out. So today's session is really going to be about strategies, success strategies, whatever John and I could derive out of that brilliant brain of yours.
Yeah.
And I want to start out, Scott, by asking you this question right here. What seeds are you sowing right now that will yield you future production?
Well, first, I want to say thanks for having me here, Noah. It's always good to talk to you. And one of the main things I can do is read all of your reporting. I find it incredibly helpful. But before I dive in, I just want to call back to 2008, 2009, because you're like, oh, Scott did all this and blah blah blah, and he's done a bunch of business. But you know what? In 2008, 2009, it was a struggle. There were four quarters when I could have gone on vacation. I could have gone to the south of France, and I did almost no business, and it was a really sobering time. And I set some real vision during that time, and it kind of set me forward. I set all these goals, and later on I looked at what I had set and had hit all of these things. So I think it's really important for the agents out there who are having a tough time, for whom 23 was really a challenging year, because I think almost everybody had a down year. I think if there's one message that people take away, it's hey, there are things you can do all the time. And I think, I'll come back to it a lot, probably, what are the actions people can take to kind of, because you can't control what the Fed's rates are. There are so many things you can't control. What you can control is how you fill your day. So in terms of, the seeds that I'm sowing now, we actually had our 23 was up about 16% year over year. So we were really proud of that. And I think one of the things we were doing, and as it leads into 24, it's a lot of what I call social proofing, where you're telling the stories of the success you had. So every time you're out meeting with people, you're just sharing, hey, this is a deal we did. This is a success we had. This is a success we had. And people like to work with people who are busy and successful, right? So to the extent that you can do that, I tell my team, share all the stories. We meet 3 times a week. And so everybody knows what's going on in the team. So the more you can tell stories about buyers who are successful, sellers who navigated this crazy time, I think it's gonna get people, your clients, excited about it, and show people the opportunities. I would also say there is, take your existing client list and reach out to people. I mean, New Year's Eve is a perfect time right now. Even if you have to send a bulk email with 2 lines that just says Happy New Year, hope you're doing well, just to open the door. But I like to say, make a list of 50 or 100 people that you think are your top fans, your greatest fans, the people that really support you, and then reach out to them and just see what's going on, schedule coffees, you're going to have to eat at least 3 times a day, right? So there's at least 3 opportunities to sit down, have a conversation with someone. I think that's it's you just don't know when that word of mouth is going to turn into business.
We don't do that anymore, right? We don't physically, personally, sorry to interrupt, but we don't sit down with people. We always do it digitally or email, and it could come off generic versus that, hey, you around to catch, even if they don't meet you to catch a coffee for 20 minutes, I almost feel like you reaching out to them might have the same effect. Sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all. I think that we're realizing that, I say this to my team all the time, it's not about efficiency. It's about effectiveness, right? If you have 5 really high quality meetings, or you have 1 quality conversation at an event, that's better than saying, oh, I got to talk to 30 people. Effectiveness over efficiency. So sit down. You just don't know what's going to come from those actual meetings. And, Zooms just don't do it. I'm so distracted most of the time when I'm on a Zoom. Not right now, but, I think in person is important. And, one other thing I would say or a couple of things. People don't, in terms of being in person, I really do think there's value in networking, right? Like actually finding groups that you can attend, meetings you can attend. I like to do a lot of philanthropy. So like organizations where you can meet people that have similar interests. I really think that it's like you're making deeper connections, and it's not necessarily about today, but it's about, like we said, sowing the seeds for the future. In terms of the actions you can take, there are maybe two more things. One, you got to block out time on the calendar. So like for me, again, we don't have to go into too much detail, but like, when are you going to reach out to buyers? When are you going to reach out to sellers? When are you going to do that work? If you put it in the calendar, I think it creates a momentum of like, okay, I'm doing this. And I really believe that there's just something about the energy of having knowing what you have to do, right? Like Einstein wore a suit, the same color suit, the same shirt every single day, not the same one, but like he had 5 of the same thing. So he didn't have to think about it. If you block out the time in your calendar, you don't have to think about it anymore. Okay, this is when I'm working on buyers. This is when I'm working with sellers. So it sets and that's the same, like, hey, the mid-afternoon, I can't sit at a screen. I'm going to fall asleep. So that's a good time to like go have a coffee or hang out with somebody because you'll be energized. Or that's the time to make phone calls, because phone calls actually get you excited sometimes. Not everybody, but for a lot of people. And something I want to say, there's something else I want to touch on, but I think we can do it. Maybe we can talk about it in a little bit.
All right. Well, so, you mentioned a lot of stuff there, Scott. One of the things I think I'd like to follow up, and by the way, this is an open session. So if you guys have got questions, anything you want to ask Scott, feel free to put in the chat. We'll get to it. This is meant to be a dialogue and not just Noah and I peppering and annoying Scott with questions. Scott, we're coming into the spring listing season. So we're going to see, touch wood, we're going to see sellers start coming out, start listing properties. That typically is a process that does its thing. The buy side, however, is an open question. And I'm curious, what are you doing for buyers these days? If you have interested buyers, how do you get them off the fence? How do you get them motivated? I'm curious what's going on in your brain there.
So let's start with the emotional side of this, and then we'll go into the data, right? You are data guys, but anybody who does sales needs to realize that you have a whole span of people. Some people are going to be more reactive to the emotional side, and some are going to be more reactive to the data, and obviously people are in between. For the way I would describe it, you have to give people an inspiring vision of what could be, and so if someone says, "How's the market?" Like, it's just a snooze fest. If you're like, well, we're seeing, like you go into details, you often will put people to sleep. The more exciting thing you can say is, well, at the end of the year, we had, in our case, we put $50 million of properties into contract in the last 7 weeks of the year, right? All of a sudden mortgage rates started to drop, and boom, everybody came out of the woodwork. And a lot of our listings that had sat on the market for sometimes like for a few months, all of a sudden had deals. Inspiring story. And I like to call it like social proof, where like people are doing these deals. I'm not telling you the market's good. I'm showing you, like, this is what's happening. So and then along those lines, in terms of buyers, it's something you can do as an agent is go and preview properties, which is something I was like, you can fill your calendar, go to open houses during the week. Like, once I see something, touch it, feel it, taste it, whatever, then I can actually tell people, oh my God, I saw this incredible value. And like, what I've found is when you go and preview apartments for people, pardon me, strike that. When you go preview apartments just to see them, you're surprised. Oh, you think of somebody when you're in the apartment. And I can tell you, I've done more than a few deals where I wasn't sure why I was going to that. I just wanted, it was a list of things. It made me think of someone. I reached out to them. It was an $8 million deal I did because I went into, into an apartment at a broker open house. And I just called my buddy there. I'm like, this is great. This might be for you. And sure enough, it was. So, and then we get into the data, right? I think a lot of people have made this case, but if you put the question to someone, it kind of scrambles their brain a little bit and gets them out of like what they think they already know, which is, would you rather buy an apartment at a low price with a higher mortgage rate, or would you rather buy an apartment at a higher price and a lower mortgage rate, right? That's the choice right now. And actually, the story you can say is right now prices are still low. You guys very loudly called the bottom. I totally agree. We put it out in our marketing. November was the bottom, and so it's this moment where rates are starting to come down and more buyers are coming in. It's a little easier to see it as a buyer. So like making the case right now is a lot easier than it was, say, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to be glib and say mortgage rates don't matter, but directionality matters more than the mortgage rate. And so it's like prices. So how do you get a buyer off the fence? Get them excited, share some data. And the last thing I would say is 99% of the news on real estate is not local. It's like trend lines across the country. There's no inventory. There's no inventory. You guys track it all the time. Inventory is down, but it's not like nothing.
Zero. Yeah.
It's down like 10. I think it's down like 10%. I mean, what is it? It's not that much. It's not down that much.
Like 5,600 units out there. Yeah, and this is the low point. We're about to probably see that pivot in the next week and a half or so.
Yeah, and so ultimately, people think they've heard something 10 months ago, and it's still true. It's not. So I would say, hey, let's go and look at some UrbanDigs stuff. Let's look at like the data itself, and I can show you. Yes, maybe there's a little more unrenovated property than some people want. But ultimately, I really do think that there's a chance to sit down with someone and say, here's the data that would help you understand that there are deals happening. And so there's a lot, what the smart money seems to be doing right now is to take advantage of low prices where mortgage rates seem to be trending down.
Yeah.
And I think that inspires people.
This has been a long duration thing also. And, the whole inventory is tight. Inventory is low. There's nothing out there. If you have any buyers out there that are making that argument and saying that, by the way, Adam, I did recognize your comment there in the chat. I totally agree with you. You let them know that February, March, April, May, that is our biggest listing season of the calendar year. That is the biggest listing season of the calendar year. The next 120 days, starting in 7 days, it all starts in 7 days, is about to be upon you. So open your eyes and get on out there, right? I love the buy side. I totally agree that 99% of those news that buyers are looking at is more national. We need to get them local. What about the sell side? How do you prep for a listing presentation? And more importantly, how do you have those difficult conversations with the sellers about pricing and price reductions, et cetera?
Well, I mean, I would challenge the notion that it has to be, such a hard conversation. I think what on the buy side, which we all seem to like, I agree. Buyers, there's a lot of liquidity. There's a lot of generational wealth. There's just so much money. Almost 70% of deals were cash last year. What we don't talk about and what I think a lot of people forget is sellers want to sell. It's not always that their goal is I need to make money on the sale, right? Now, sure, like people don't like losing money, right? I mean, how many times have we seen an apartment, you can say, okay, why is it priced at $3 million? Well, they bought it for 2.5 and they put in $500,000. They bought it in say 2016. Right. And they put in $500,000. So they're trying to get their money out. And unfortunately, it's not worth the same. Right. And so they're going to lose money. So I think the most important thing you can do when you're meeting with someone is to like take a temperature. What is their, why are they selling? Right. Are they upsizing? Like what they're trying to achieve is going to inform a lot of the conversation. For somebody who's, you have to really, like if somebody's upsizing, there's a real opportunity right now. If somebody's open to doing work on their next buy, there's an opportunity. If it's an estate, that's a different conversation. So I think you have to sometimes ask more questions than give answers. Like I want to first understand, why did they fall in love with the apartment? Because a lot of how we market, how we think of, how we're going to find a buyer is like understanding what about this place really resonated to them, because we're trying to create an avatar of who this buyer is. And all of our marketing is like reverse engineering to the buyer. If I happen to have sold 10 apartments in a building, I've already got a sense of like, who are the kinds of people that are gravitating towards this building. But I think it's like focusing on the people and creating a vision for the seller. What is this process going to look like? And there are some data points that I think are important to share, right? Like an unrenovated apartment, you probably talked about it. There's a real discount for unrenovated. So I think we need to spell that and show the gap between what's selling renovated and what's selling unrenovated. So you could call it a penalty. You could just call it like a kind of the unknown of renovating right now. And we're actually going to do a detailed something in a few weeks to talk about why is renovation still costing so much, right? Supply chain is there. It's like there's some unknown about labor, but it's that unknown is scaring people. So there's a discount. And I think as long as you explain why this apartment that's unrenovated is selling at such a discount to the renovated apartment, I think you'll get there. But I think the biggest takeaway is, how do you balance, because we're optimistic, right? Good real estate agents are optimistic. Like, how do you balance the optimism? Because I am very bullish on 24. I think it's going to be a much healthier, I'm already being balanced, but like a much healthier year than 23. Like more deals are going to come together. How do you balance the optimism with the realism? Because I think if you get carried away about, hey, we did so many deals at the end of the year, sellers will they'll latch on to whatever optimistic thing you say, and then they're going to push back on the more conservative pricing you give. So you have to couch everything in, we're seeing things improve, and there's a lot of buyer activity, but ultimately we need to be careful. And last quarter, things sold within 2.5% of their last asking price, which, and we've seen bidding wars as well. I mean, once things have kind of gotten to a level, it's a very efficient market. And again, because there's so many buyers who are less worried about mortgage rates or paying cash, it's a strong buyer pool that is more interested in feeling like there's value today. So it's very price point specific. Some sell listings, you want to price them right on the nose, and you're going to get a lot of buyers hitting the bid. And then you have some buildings that require certain liquidity after closing, and that buyer pool is smaller, and it just takes longer to find a buyer. And then add on the renovation and those things, it takes a little bit longer. So I think there's just a lot of variables, but I think the biggest takeaway is, hey, ask a lot more questions. You're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to make more of a connection with the seller so you can understand like what their goals are. And then you can have your insight and your sense of like you kind of layer on your experience and your insight to come up with a real vision for the seller.
So Scott, let me ask, are there ever listings that you don't want to take? Are there stories that sellers tell you about why they're selling, what the rationale is, what their theory is, that just hit you the wrong way and say, you know what, this is going to be just a waste of my time because we're not seeing eye to eye, especially sort of in this market that's a little bit slower?
Well, I would put that on myself at the start, and say like, this has probably happened to people out there where you sit down with a seller, you hear what their pricing is, and you're not like confident enough at the time, and you end up overpromising on a price. You end up overpromising. Like I work with a team, so like there's always somebody working with me on every listing, right? And so there have been times when, oh yeah, I'm going to do every showing. When I know like that hasn't happened recently, but like that's a thing that you can say if you have a partner. You just need to be transparent about what's going on. And I'm not saying that like people haven't priced property a little bit higher and said, look, this is an aggressive price. But I've had people say, no, I want you at every single showing. Like there's a certain energy that if you can't help people understand your own system and how you work, you can overpromise and it will 100% bite you in the end. So you have to really explain what you're doing and how you do it and say like, look, this is the price I recommend. And if they want to come in with a very, very, very high price, you have to, the way I describe it, you want your seller to own that price. You want them to say, yes, this is my price. This is what I want to do. I feel like I need to do my due diligence and price it there, even if I've shown them, if the price is wrong and all the pitfalls, and say, this is your price. I'm recommending this and we can adjust it, but get their commitment that they understand this is a partnership. It's their property. They have the right to price it where they want to price it. But there is a difference. I can say, look, I would advise this. You want to do this. And if I understand why, then I might be okay with it. But yeah, there are people that I've said, I've laid down the gauntlet, said, if we do all these things, yes, I think that we could work together. And if not, we can shake hands, thanks very much. And, I'm happy to be your second broker, like I'll call me in 6 months when it doesn't sell, kind of a thing. I think a lot of people are afraid of saying no, but there have been a lot of property that sat on the market for the wrong price. There was something we were looking at the other day where I looked at it, I said, I don't understand that price. It makes no sense. And, it's just because somebody paid this, put in this, and wants to sell it for more, and it's just going to sit.
Yeah, there's a lot of entertainment value because we have that on our advanced search. You can search by days on market. So you can look at the ones that have been on for a while, had numerous price cuts. And sometimes there's some entertaining things. You can definitely see, the seller's motivation is clearly transparent. Unfortunately, sometimes.
There's something else that I want to, I think is really important for people thinking about as they're pitching sellers. I don't know that everyone does the best job of differentiating between the marketing strategy and the selling strategy, the sales strategy. I mean, one is all of the prep that goes in to like really position the property well. And then the sales strategy is when you actually go on the market and the rubber hits the road. And when you explain all the moments there are during the sales process, when you can say we're overpriced, or it's something else, it helps inform people so that you're laying the groundwork now for all of those tough conversations. One of my colleagues, who's terrific, Ari Harkov, and I were having a conversation, and I agreed with this completely. He said, there are 4 reasons you want there only to be 4 reasons why you're not getting a listing. One is they don't like your price. Number 2, they don't like your commission, right? Number 3, there's some other person who's like an incumbent in the building who they feel like that person has more of a track record. And 4, they have like a family relationship with somebody, right? Those are the 4 reasons you want to, if you lose a listing, and that's why, like, okay, you have a firm feeling on your price, and that's, and you feel like this is what the right commission is or whatever. If any of those, if it's for some other reason, then you want to take stock and figure out what that is. But I think it's if you lay it out really clearly for the seller and you make the case and you have the conversation in a thoughtful way and you create a connection with them, I think the chips are going to fall where they fall.
Yeah, I love the separation of the marketing strategy and the sales strategy. And I think this is a nice glimpse into how you think about your daily conversations with your customers or / clients. And I want to go into that marketing strategy just a little bit because I do have a question from Adam Schneider out here, and I want to pose it to you, Scott.
Okay.
You are quite prolific on social media. What's the trick to engaging as opposed to just posting? I think that's an excellent question.
The trick to engaging
versus just posting.
Right. So I think it starts with what are you putting out there, right? So you have to make a decision that what you're sharing with people, you want it to be engaging in the first place, right? Like, I'm here to help people. Like, so all I don't, yes, do we post some things? Hey, look, we're, team of the month and all that stuff, or hey, we have a new property on the market. People like pretty pictures, and, they like tours of fancy properties. Go on TikTok and see the ones that get the most engagement. That's, there's some room for that. But I think in terms of engaging, I want to go learn. I like to be on LinkedIn. That seems to be the most positive social media outlet for me. Like it's the most uplifting. There's people are there to learn. So I want to give people something to learn. And the more value I add, then, it will come back. It's a little hard to measure ROI on social, unless you get a lead from Instagram or a lead directly from LinkedIn or something. But I don't know if I'm answering your question, but in terms of engaging, I think you can go on to, as you look through your feed, if you have a unique perspective to add to other people's feed, to other people's posts, then that's going to be helpful to them. And then your own social, I just think of what is my unique, what's the lens that I'm looking through? How can I add something that is different, provocative? I think also people don't realize it when they come up with a subject line for an email, it's a hook. When you come up with the top line for your post, it's got to be hooky. And I think people kind of forget that it's scrolling. So somebody's got to catch your attention. And I think that's you got to engage in that way. And it's the same thing when you're in person, when you're talking to somebody at a cocktail party. How's the market? Tell a story. It's not information, it's a story. Everything should be couched in something that people can wrap their heads around.
Yeah, I think, let me just tell you, it's a hard question to answer because we're in the content business ourselves, and it's extremely hard for us to engage our audience. I would love to have 300 people on today. Maybe I didn't engage them properly. Maybe the subject line of the email was wrong. Look at the wisdom that we're talking about and extracting. Every professional, you can't tell me that there's someone out there that couldn't learn from this and make more money by putting these strategies. Like, why aren't they here? And, you can only control what you can control, but you did say something that I just want to say resonated with me. And that was the learn part. You want to engage. You have to understand that the person you're trying to engage, they really want to get educated on something. Why are you guys here? Not that Scott. Why are you want to learn something? You want to extract something that maybe you could use to better your business. These guys, they want to learn something so that the decision that they make when they buy or sell might be a more clear decision, a more confident decision, right? And I'll tell you right now, I'm in the business of kind of education as well, because we're in turning data into stories, and we're constantly struggling with engagement and trying to better ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard. And all I can tell you guys is put things out there, talk to your buyers, talk to your sellers, talk to your buyers, especially, and ask them, find 10 of them and say, what if I were to send out one thing a month to you in an email, what would you want it to be on? And listen to what they say. And you got 10 responses or 15 or 20 responses, the more the better. Now you're going to start to see consensus. We call this discovery, right? Everyone does discovery before you build something. You go and find information out from the people you're trying to engage. You might learn something from that experiment. I guarantee you will. And then maybe you could start that way, and over time, you'll figure it out. But I just want that it's a hard process, and you got to jump right in there, and you got to fail, learn, identify, and then you'll put it all together over time.
What I would say also, Noah, just to add one other thing, people forget that what we see on a day-to-day basis is really interesting to everybody else. Like the crazy stuff we see behind the scenes, if you can tell the story in, 100 words or less, you might get somebody interested, like somebody who's a fake support animal, emotional support animal. Just like I've seen some crazy stuff lately. And if you tell the story in an interesting way, like, oh, I never would have, somebody never would have learned that. But, for me, why am I here? It's like, I sometimes have to speak to have a conversation with someone to figure out what I'm thinking. Like I actually, when something comes out of my mouth, like, oh, that's a different way of putting it. Or when I'm listening to somebody else say something, it's like osmosis. It gives me a new way of talking about something. a phrase that someone drops can be very, very, helpful to, as a building block for a conversation with someone. So, the more you listen, the more you digest and then add your own little thing. I think ultimately on social media, it's like, what's the most helpful to the audience? But I have heard the more you engage with other people, the chances are you're going to get more engagement your way.
Yeah, it's true. Now I know why I put people to sleep at parties, because they ask me how the market's doing, and I just, well, let me tell you. Let me whip out my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about supply.
Yeah, let me exactly. But Scott, I just want to talk about, you mentioned a lot of stuff. Is the growing your business aspect, because you've done phenomenally well on social media, sort of, growing your business that way. And I'm curious, are there other ways outside of real estate that you look to sort of, grow your network, grow your business?
I think there's a lot of, I touched on it maybe earlier on. Outside of my business, you have to, I would think as a person, it's like there's something you care about. Right? Is it, animals, and you really care about, helping people here in, pets and dogs, stray dogs, whatever, or is it, something based on your religious affiliation, or is it some other thing? Like, are you interested in art? Are you supporting the ballet? Like, are you supporting the opera? Whatever it is, it's like finding community and then building relationships in that community it's a relationship building thing. It takes plenty of time. If you go in with no expectations other than I'm going to make new friends and connect, you'll be very happy because you're going to connect, and then business will also come. But I think that's a really important thing. And what I would say is, like, find people that don't complain. Right? I mean, it's a little bit mushy, but like, surround yourself with people that are like positive. I know right now, like, there's a lot to complain about, especially, in a sales business, where things are hard to do, deals are hard to put together. But I think surround yourself with people that are positive, doing things every day, just thinking in a out of the box way. And I think you'll find that you'll be inspired by the ideas and the conversation that happens. It's like you have a chance to take some action every day and grow your business. And like, you want to be around other business people. They don't have to be in real estate, but if you're in an office, a real estate office, talk to the people who are closing business. Don't talk to the people who are complaining, right? And if you get out in the world and go to open houses, you're going to see people who are probably a little bit more positive than the people who are hunkered down in the office.
No. It's okay to say. It is okay to say. I mean, a lot of people, it is okay to say. There are agents out there that are just sitting in front of the computer complaining, right? And again, there are successful agents out there that are doing it. Fill your day. They're meeting their clients. They're networking. They're supporting causes. This is a people business. This is a relationship business. This is a trust business, right? You got to grow your circle, grow your network. Everything that you talked about today, Scott, related to that goal of growing. And you look at how it works over the year after year after year. It's not for today. This is the thing. A lot of agents are short-sighted. A lot of agents want instant gratification. We have to break that, right? It's a hard thing to break. It's a hard thing to break. I hope that you guys, listen, I hope you guys learned at least one or two things from Scott today. And we're doing last call because we're done with our questions. Unless you guys have more questions, this is your last call to post some questions. We'll record this. We'll put it out. I hope you'll email Scott and thank him for his time. For sure. He didn't have to do this. You know what I'm saying? And he approached me. He wanted to do this. He wanted to share this. He understands the challenge of the markets out there. And there's methods that work. And if you can incorporate, get a little inspired. Scott, your positivity, I think it's infectious. I think it's great. And I think that that's kind of what you need to motivate yourself to go and do things that your schedule otherwise maybe not have done. Fill your day, make your schedule, right? Michael has a question, if I could ask you, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good question. How did you grow your business in the first 2 years? The hardest time. They got to get over that hump, right? Otherwise you quit. Versus now with your team.
I mean, the first 2 years, I worked almost every single day of the week. The first year, I took off about 3 days. I mean, I literally just, it was all hustle. I had no, all I did was go out. I was single. I was out every night. I was just talking and talking and talking and doing rental deals. My first year was just all rentals. So it was just a hustle, hustle, hustle. Learn the city. I moved here in 2002. So it was, and I was mostly just having conversations with people, learning about like what makes them tick. I'm a naturally curious person. And I think what really kind of started to click was like I would hear what people, I'm like a bartender. Everybody wants to tell me everything. So, I can just listen and, hey, you should meet this person. You should meet this person. So I think you need to put on a headset of how can I help people? And it doesn't have to have anything to do with real estate. I think people thankfully people show up to this business after, and they're in 30s and 40s and they have a little experience doing something else and they bring a unique perspective. And, people forget that they have so much to offer that even if they've only been in the business for a year or two. And so what they can do is just listen, hey, actually, you should try this thing in this neighborhood. You should meet so-and-so. It doesn't have to be about real estate. It just has to be about being generous and adding value however you can. So I think that's a really important thing for agents that are building their business to remember it, because you can read The $1 Million Agent, which is an absolutely fantastic book that the Keller Williams guys wrote. And every single thing is like asking for referrals and how, I'm never too busy for a referral and you're, all the, whatever the little taglines are. But you know what? How about you just help? How about you just like add value to somebody, make an introduction? We set goals every week. Like how many introductions can we make? And it's not about real estate. How many times can I just put 2 people on an email saying, you guys should talk? This week, this guy's doing a nonprofit that, is trying to help people invest in biotech for diseases that are important to them that they're trying to cure. And then I connected him to a biotech VC. Like, what's in that? I'm just connecting people who they're probably going to, invest in a company that's going to end up making the world better, right? That's
because that goodwill. Those 2 people are now those 2 people in the circles that they're in. You're going to be the guy that they reference for a property.
So
down
it's
the
like
road.
Add value, help. You can do that no matter how early you are in your business. Most of what we talked about here has nothing to do with how many years you're in the business. You still have to learn the inventory, you still have to do all this stuff. And then market yourself. Don't be afraid to market yourself. Everybody's got to know what you do. Got to tell stories. So I think those 2 things I think are a good combination when you're starting.
Yeah. Scott, how foundational was doing the rentals to your business now? Going out, walking the streets, seeing the rentals.
Well, I would ask people like if they've ever waited tables, or done, been a garbage man or done, construction. Like doing that made me realize how much I didn't want to do it. So that was one thing. It was really a grind, but I also learned every block. I mean, I was seeing like 50 apartments a week. I was just hustling like crazy. So I mean, I had like just the most intense education about every part of the city. And so I started to know, like I file everything away in my head. So it was like really, to me, it was just getting foundation. It was hugely helpful, both to motivate me to get into sales, but also to help me understand kind of, just what the city, how it laid out.
Product knowledge. This is great. This is great. Any final questions? Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. I mean, I feel like I have to go talk to my team and go take about 6 things that you said and implement them in my business as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to Scott Harris. Thank you to John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. I hope you guys found this helpful. And please, guys, if you find time for it, reach out to Scott. Thank him. Make a connection.
Yeah, if you want to go on LinkedIn, you can, find me there, shoot me a DM, and I'd love to, chat. Anybody that's an offer. And, certainly it's not hard to find me. Google Scott Harris on, Brown Harris, you'll find me, or you can check me out on Instagram or whatever. Thanks.
Awesome. Here's to 2024, and here's to a successful and recovery with the bottom call in November, December. I love it. Thank you guys. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.